Thank you again, Thomas. Thomas, as is the custom for the council, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you wish to leave, you can do so now. Well, after Thomas's presentation, all this looks boring. Right, so we'll go on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Minutes of meeting Wednesday, 27th of May 2015 of Planning, Regulatory and Licensing Committee.
I move, Mr. Mayor.
I'll take the vote. We did have NASA astronauts to the parlour last week, and to use a term from a film, Houston, we have a problem. We'll go back the old-fashioned way and have a show of hands.
That's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Item number 4, minutes of meeting Wednesday, 3rd of June 2015 of Cabinet.
Move, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
We'll go back to show of hands then, please. Minutes of meeting Friday, 5th of June 2015 of Licensing Committee. Show of hands, please. Minutes of meeting 15th of June 2015 of Scrutiny, Learning and Layskip.
Move, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Can I put it to the vote?
Carried, Mr. Mayor.
Minutes of meeting Tuesday 16th of June 2015 of Scrutiny, Social Services.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Put it to the vote.
Carried, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, move, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Put it to the vote. Item 9, minutes of meeting Wednesday 17th of June 2015 of Full Council.
Yes, move, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Put it to the vote.
Carried, Mr. Mayor.
Minutes of meeting Monday 22nd June 2015 of Scrutiny, Neighbourhood Services and Public Protection.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask for an amendment to be made to the minutes, please? Members will notice that during the minutes that Councillor David Jones and Councillor Chris Barley were present, but they're not indicated as being present on the covering sheet as attendees. So if that could be amended, I'm happy to move the minutes.
I'll put that to the vote. Minutes of meeting Wednesday 24th of June 2015 of Licensing Committee.
I move, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Put it to the vote.
Unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
That's carried. Minutes of meeting Wednesday 24th of June 2015 of Licensing Committee.
I move, Mr. Mayor.
I'll put that to the vote. That's carried. Minutes of meeting Wednesday 24th of June 2015 of Planning, Regulatory and Licensing Committee.
I move, Mr Mayor.
I'll put that to the vote.
Carried, Mr Mayor.
Minutes of meeting Monday 29th of June 2015 of Scrutiny, Governance, Performance, Business Change and Corporate Services.
Mr Mayor.
Second.
I'll put that to the vote. That's carried. Minutes of meeting Tuesday 30th of June 2015 of Scrutiny, Regulation, Planning and Countryside. Regeneration. Planning and Countryside. I'll put it all to the vote then.
Carried, Mr Mayor.
That's carried. Item 16, minutes of meeting Wednesday 1st of July 2015 of Cabinet.
Yes, move, Mr Mayor.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Put it to the vote.
Carried, Mr Mayor.
That's carried. And item 17, minutes of meeting Monday 6th of July 2015 of Audit Committee.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Seconded.
And we'll put that to the vote.
Carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to the committee reports, and it's item 18, annual improvement report, to receive a report from the Welsh Audit Office, and it's Colin, Justine and Jeremy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting myself and my colleagues along to this meeting to present our report. This report was published recently, last month, and as with all of the Wales Audit Office corporate assessment reports, is on the Wales Audit Office website and in the public domain. I'm taking the risk, and it is a risk in my circumstances, of relying on technology, and rather than speaking to you and you hearing my dulcet tones, I thought I'd give you some visuals as well. Let's see if I can get this thing to work. Okay, so before I start, I just wanted to set the context for this report and remind us all of the process that the Wales Audit Office goes through with all of the 22 councils in Wales in terms of reporting on the council's compliance with the local government measure. Each year we have a programme of improvement studies and audits of the council's approach, and you're well used to receiving an annual improvement report that summarises that work. However, each council receives a more in-depth corporate assessment once during a 4-year period, and it was this council's turn, if you like, to receive that in-depth assessment, which we undertook the main part of that work last September. And so this annual improvement report also includes our findings from that full corporate assessment. And the corporate assessment methodology is carried out in the same way by the Wales Audit Office at each of the councils subject to that assessment. And it focuses on these key areas. We seek to answer the question as to whether the council's vision and strategic direction supports improvement, whether the governance and accountability arrangements support effective decision making, how well is the council managing its resources, and that's not just the pound resources, but its people resources and its asset resources in terms of managing those assets effectively to deliver planned improvements. How effectively is the council working in collaboration and partnership with other organisations to improve performance and outcomes? How well is the council managing its own improvement programme and with the purpose of making progress in achieving the improvements that the council plans in terms of its performance and outcomes for the citizens of Merthyr Tydfil? So that approach we followed in our work with the council, and the next few slides will take each of those areas in turn, remind ourselves of the overall conclusion that we reached on each, and just touch on the key strands of evidence that led us to form that conclusion. And even though it's quite some time ago now, I think both myself and the team will recall the first day that we set foot on the council premises, and we received a presentation by your senior politicians and also your senior management, who were keen to share with us the vision that this council has for the future. And I remember us being quite struck by the clarity of that vision and the strength of commitment towards achieving it. And we concluded that the council has established a shared vision for the county borough, along with its partners, and that is a vision which it supports through its own clearly stated corporate priorities. And there's a tendency to look at these things in terms of nuts and bolts, and a single integrated plan is a short and snappy bullet, but it hides the considerable work that the council has done with a range of key partners in forming a long-term vision and shared priorities for the future public service delivery in Merthyr Tydfil. And as we said, that's supported by a clear and accessible corporate plan. We were quite pleased to be able to say that, because if we go back 2 or 3 years, we have, as the Wales Audit Office, been quite critical of the council's corporate improvement plan in terms of its clarity in setting out what the council intended to achieve, and more importantly, what difference that would make to from the view of a citizen of Merthyr Tydfil. But we're pleased to be able to report that through the council efforts that has become much more clear and is accessible. And there was an absolute common focus in terms of the council, the politicians, its management, and also in speaking to its partners, that there was a common focus, and at the centre of that focus it was to improve the quality of services and the facilities for the benefit of the citizens of Merthyr Tydfil. And the number of times that we heard whilst we were on site that the particular approach, it was described to us, well, it's the Merthyr way. The council has also not sat still. It's gone through some difficult times. You will all remember receiving quite a difficult Eston inspection and what occurred following that. You've engaged with your own staff about how they felt about the way that the council was being run and the way that they were engaged in the running of the council. You know, we've had cause to issue the council with statutory recommendation. And all of those things, if you like, the perfect storm, led the council to undertake a review of its arrangements and really engage and embark on a cultural change programme. And you're well down the path of that now. And no doubt you'll tell me that you've made even further progress since we were last here with you discussing it. But that cultural change programme really has an ambition for the council to have an environment in which the expectations are high, as is the accountability for performance and the transparency of decision making and the way that the council is being run. And also importantly that there's a low blame culture. And one of the key elements that has arisen from that cultural change programme has been the formation of the staff forum, and in carrying out our work we engaged and heard from the staff on that forum and the value that they placed on their access to the top of the office in terms of the chief executive and the leader, and the fact that they were able to say what they wanted to say without fear or favour, and that they were listened to, and what they had to say was taken on board and acted upon. We've looked at the arrangements that the council has for communicating and engaging with its citizens and stakeholders, and found those to be generally effective. Just to avoid a sea of green on that first slide, I've put something in there which purports to be amber. And I think just in terms of that, this idea that your service improvement framework goes from the single integrated plan with your partners through corporate plan and service improvement plans and down into the personal objectives of your individual members of staff it was clear that the council still had some way to go in terms of reaching right down through the organisation and getting that clarity down into your communication between manager and individual member of staff. But I'm sure, as I say, you've made further progress with that. So in terms of vision and strategic direction, a pretty positive story. The second area was governance and accountability. And this was our conclusion, and it's there in the report. Sound governance structures are mostly in place, but there are weaknesses in safeguarding and whistleblowing arrangements, and some other arrangements are not working as effectively as they might. So let me expand a little on that. I've spoke to the previous slide about the improving culture, and one of the what difference does it make is often a question that I ask. And from the council that we started working with some years ago, there was a change in that issues weren't service issues, they weren't departmental issues, they were corporate issues that needed to be dealt with, and they would get a corporate response rather than pointing the finger at an individual member of staff and saying go away and deal with that problem. There has been, through this cultural development, a move to a real corporate feel and a sense of both political and managerial accountability. The constitution you have in place clearly describes roles and responsibilities. That constitution, each of you members will have had drawn to your attention, along with various member codes of conduct. And what we found in observing the council in action is that member behaviours are broadly appropriate. They're supported by a standards committee that's in place, and also the individual attention of your monitoring officer. And the council has had sound risk management arrangements in place for many years, and those are appropriately embedded, and they're focused in the right way. They're focused on your strategic risks rather than at lower level. Oh, sorry, I've gone. I don't know how I go back on that. Can I? Brilliant. There we go. Just in terms of some things still to keep an eye on, scrutiny and challenge is developing, but we found it to be variable in its rigour and its focus. What I mean by that is that you have some committees where appropriate challenge and rigorous questioning is in place, and you have other committees where that still has some way to go. But most importantly, I think we found that it was difficult to identify the impact of scrutiny. The record of scrutiny, and I've just heard you go through a process where you referred to the minutes of scrutiny meetings, and you've signed those off and approved them. What we found when we read those scrutiny minutes is it wasn't clear to us what impact those scrutiny meetings has had. What was it that had been scrutinised? What recommendations have been made as a result, and what difference would that make? There's further work to do, I think, in terms of clarifying the work of scrutiny and its impact. We looked not just in this council, but across the 22 councils at arrangements for safeguarding of children and also the whistleblowing arrangements in terms of policy, practice and awareness raising with staff. And we've identified aspects of those arrangements where the council needs to strengthen them. And we've also identified previously AGS, I'm sorry I've thrown an acronym in there. I'm sure you're all fond of your annual governance statement and familiar with it. We have identified opportunities where the council can improve not only the content of that, but the use to which it's put in the council. And at the time of our visit, only limited progress had been made in that respect. We come to use of resources, and I think it's fair to say, and it won't come as any surprise, that even before our corporate assessment there was not only an interest on the part of the Wales Audit Office in how effectively this council was managing its financial resources, but that interest went more widely than just ourselves. And the conclusion we reached from the work that we did with you in detail was that the council has taken significant strides forward in its use of resources, but it does need to ensure that it has sufficient capacity and capability to meet the challenges ahead. And And I think I could probably make that statement to 21 other councils as well. And I think it's important to recognise that there are no signs that the austerity, the climate of austerity in which councils work shows any sign of improving. And in common with a number of other councils, part of the cuts that you make in order to manage within that climate mean that you lose staff, and often those staff aren't on frontline services, but they're in the corporate spine and support, often in financial support. So in some ways, the very challenge that you need to address leads you to reduce the capacity and capability that you have to address that, and that's a conundrum many authorities face. But certainly this council, as I say, has taken significant strides. Some of the financial governance arrangements that you've introduced, both in the form of the budget board, which I understood has met again quite recently, meets on a regular monthly basis, has had an impact in terms of this council better monitoring and managing its finances. You know, members will be aware that you've had difficult meetings and conversations about overspends on budgets and the impact of those overspends on the council's reserves. These arrangements that you've put in place, the budget board and the transformation board to an extent, has meant that the council is in a much more robust situation in terms of delivering on the budgets that council members set each year. The asset management arrangements that you have in place are effective. And they give this council a focus on prioritising the efficient use of its buildings and also the use of technology and information we found to be supporting improved services for your citizens. That's the first red rag status that we've got there, and actually it's probably not my red rag status or our team's. You know, the council identified for itself that it had issues in its human resources section, and before we came, you'd prioritised that service for an internal review with the help of an external consultant, and you'd already got an action plan in place to drive improvement. I haven't put the action plan in place as a green. Often it's quite tempting to say, well, we've sorted that out then, we've reviewed this and we've got an action plan in place. Just keep an eye on the delivery of that action plan, and I think it may be some time yet before that turns green, but we are confident from our perspective that you've identified the right issues that need to be dealt with and you're taking appropriate steps. I've referred to the level of scrutiny and challenge being variable in scrutiny committees. We've also seen in the carrying out the work of the budget board, where often officers will come forward and present the budget pressures that they face, that again the level of scrutiny and challenge of those officers can be variable, and also there is scope to improve the quality of the performance and cost information that facilitate that challenge. And once again, this is the situation in many councils. Arrangements have been quite traditional in terms of counting how much you spend, but those councils that have appropriate management cost information that tell you actually how much your services cost rather than how much you spend, and it's an interesting difference. That information is quite hard to lay your hands on, and it is within Merthyr Tydfil, and I know if your Director of Finance is here in the room or if he isn't, I've had those conversations with him, and he understands that, and he is working to provide that information in a different way to facilitate more effective challenge. At the time we came, and you may well tell me that they've developed, I know that the Council is looking to commission a strategic partner, and it's also commissioned PwC, and they've done some work on your operating model. But at the time of our corporate assessment, and this again, you could apply it to many councils, savings plans focus predominantly on cost reduction rather than cost effectiveness and value for money. And again, establishing where you can provide more cost-effective services and provide better value for money does require the quality of performance and cost information to be to be in place. And again, subject to anything you tell me about progress you've made with your partners, at the time you were yet to develop a long-term vision and strategy for your alternative service design. There was a recognition that services would have to be redesigned, but the clear strategy for that wasn't in place. And of course, and it's been commented on, because of the impact of previous years' overspends, the usable reserves that the council had gave it very limited flexibility, which necessitated these very strong arrangements on budget management. Collaboration and partnership. This is an area where we were particularly impressed with not only the council's arrangements, but the views of its partners and stakeholders and the achievements that the council had made. And we concluded that the council and its partners are working effectively towards shared goals and have delivered improved facilities and positive outcomes for citizens. And if you've read the detail of the report, you will see that we refer to numerous examples there. But at a high level, the evidence that we had for that was that the council has been working in collaboration with a range of partners and other councils to the benefit of the people of Merthyr Tydfil, and had been doing so for a number of years before we carried out this corporate assessment. There is this clear alignment between the single integrated plan priorities and those contained within the strategic plans of not only the council but each of its strategic partners. This issue of capacity, there's no doubt that the council has benefited through collaborative working by enhancing the capacity to deliver, and also through achieving significant financial investment in the county borough through those collaborative arrangements and funding streams that they open up. As I said, numerous examples of projects delivered collaboratively where those were demonstrably provided improved facilities, and there were real positive outcomes for Merthyr Tydfil citizens. Each year we look at the arrangements that the council has for managing and driving improvement, and the conclusion we reached was that those arrangements had meant that the council continues to deal with significant service and financial challenges with the benefit of external support. And the message, in our view, that the council has benefited from external capacity and support that it has commissioned and others have commissioned for them is writ large in our report and in the overall conclusion. There's no doubt that this programme of cultural change that I've described is supporting more effective management and should facilitate the development of more rigorous challenge of performance. There's openness, there's transparency, there's ability of people to identify areas where performance needs to be improved without fearing a blame culture. Rather, this is accepted and welcomed corporately as a means to help the council improve. The service improvement framework that you've developed, you've recognised, I think, and again this has to do with getting benefit from external support. I know you've looked to Denbighshire as one council where it was perceived that arrangements to drive service improvement were well regarded, and you've not only not adopted their approach entirely, but you've certainly got an extra resource in there in the shape of an individual that previously worked in Denbighshire, and you've adapted your arrangements looking at good practice in Denbighshire to help inform that, and you now have this service improvement framework in place, which still had a way to go in terms of becoming embedded when we were here, but it's had the opportunity of a few more months, and I think that from our perspective that clearly had a great deal of potential to help this council move forward in terms of achieving its improvement objectives. You've also developed an annual programme of individual service challenge sessions, and you'd embarked on that programme. I know the HR service had been through that, so had finance, etc., and I'm sure you've moved that programme forward since we were here. Just in terms of an amber there, continuing to benefit from external support to improve the capacity to robustly challenge financial and service performance. Now, you might smile when I say that I think you continue to benefit from. I'm sure that you've winced at some of the experiences that you've had in undergoing that external support. You know, I have no doubt that the Education Recovery Board has provided some challenge to the council, but it seems to us that weathering that challenge and benefiting from it has helped the council to make progress in terms of addressing some of its educational achievement challenges. Likewise, whilst we were here, the Welsh Government had sent representatives to work with you, and they were providing feedback on the new arrangements that you had in place for budget monitoring and your transformation board. Not always might those have chimed exactly with what your intentions were, but our view is that overall those that external capacity and further insight has helped the council move forward. There are some other issues identified in the report. Despite what I've had to say about the corporate improvement plan, service improvement plan, the actual service level improvement plans were variable in their quality. You've got a consistent approach. The information that's required of all services is the same, but the quality of the information that some services are able to provide is superior to that provided by others, and you need to get that consistency. And we'll be reviewing that in the work that we do with the council in the coming year. And also in terms of the annual programme of individual service challenge sessions, we felt that there needed to be clarity as to what difference did this review make. Was everybody leaving the room at the end of that session clear as to what issues have we identified where we need to improve, what do we need to do to improve it, and whose responsibility is that to lead on it? And we didn't feel that on the sessions that we observed that clarity was fully there. In terms of the performance and outcomes of the council, this was our conclusion. The council's progress towards achieving its planned outcomes remains variable. And if we look at the evidence underneath, I think that demonstrates it from a RAG status. There's a healthy spread of greens, a number of ambers, but a couple of reds. You know, the red is no surprise to this council. The council's clear focus is on continuing to drive the scale and pace of improvement of educational attainment, and the council recognises that it still has some way to go. But the green aspect of that clearly recognises the progress that you've made. You know, the most improved council in those terms 2 years running, and a promising, I believe, or an optimistic view of further progress this year. The council's always been proud of its social care that it provides, and modernising support services, developing those preventative services for vulnerable people. The council is making progress on that, but our report recognises that the limited resources you have to commission sustainable social services at a time when demand is growing and resources are becoming more constrained presents significant challenges. You know, environmental health services, those are services that have faced cuts. You're still providing those at above minimum levels, but there's new legislation that places further and new statutory duties that will present further challenges. The fact that I've put waste recycling in red, I'm sure won't surprise you. The council failed to meet the national recycling targets, and your performance was the poorest of all the councils in Wales. But you are piloting, or that pilot may even have finished now. You'll be considering the implications of that pilot for changing your recycling methodology with an effort to improve the council's performance in that area. So overall, we had two main conclusions from the report, and they were that the council continues to face significant challenges and must continue to draw upon external support if it is to deliver its priorities. And secondly, that the Council's track record and its capacity and capability may mitigate the effectiveness of its arrangements to secure continuous improvement for 2015-16. And I think it's that second conclusion which led me to feel it was appropriate to give you some ambers and some reds, because I think it's easy to focus on the greens. Don't assume that the ambers have been dealt with. Keep an eye on them, because they still have to track through and make the difference and achieve the improved outcomes that you anticipate that they will. And those red areas are potential Achilles heels that you need to maintain a focus on and really apply your energies to improving if you are to continue to meet that duty to secure continuous improvement in your services. But I do think, you know, just to finish on a positive beat, the escalator is going up. This corporate performance culture that we see clearly developing in the work that we've done with you over the last 2 or 3 years. And I've tried to set out in those bullets what are the key elements of that need focus. This clear vision and effective leadership. We were struck by the clarity of the vision of this council, but you can't drop the pace of that effective, visible, accountable leadership that you've embarked on if you are to keep that escalator moving in that direction. The cultural change will be key. The responsibility and accountability that's writ large through this service improvement framework that you're implementing, which our report says it was too early for us to evaluate the impact of that. It was still becoming embedded. The need, as I've referred to, robust data, and in some areas your financial and your service performance data isn't sufficiently robust yet for you to be absolutely clear that you're addressing the right issues and driving or that the picture of performance that you have is accurate. The internal challenge and scrutiny, you know, we're not suggesting that you all fight with each other or behave in some obnoxious manner and congratulate yourself when you leave the room. This is about constructive challenge. It's about asking appropriate questions and keeping that questioning going until you're satisfied that you've got the right answer or you're clear on the actions that need to be taken next. Self-evaluation, this ability to actually identify for yourselves how well you're performing and for that to be objective and for that to be open and for that to be real and for you to be prepared in a no-blame way to identify for yourselves where you need to improve before the Wales Audit Office regulator comes and tells you, and more importantly, in the Council's perspective, for Welsh Government to be satisfied that this is a council that knows itself, and for your strategic planning to be focused on sustainably improving outcomes in identified priority areas. The local government improvement measure is dead in the water. It's to be replaced by the Future Generations Bill, and that will change the way that the duty that's placed on the council, you know, because you must find it a bit galling to have a duty to secure continuous improvement when the financial constraints that you face make that very difficult. So even before the measure is dead in the water, we accept that the council can't continuously improve the service it does, but what it must be able to do is to manage the message to its citizens on where the council's priorities are, how it will invest and what difference that will make, but equally where it will be removing its investment, where it will no longer be providing services, where others will have to step up to provide those services. The council needs to be equally clear in its communication with its citizens on that front. And finally, what I would say is if you could improve the focus in each of those areas, not only would the escalator continue to go up, you never know, it might even get there quicker. And to further assist you, the Auditor General has made 2 recommendations in the report. And those recommendations are that the Council, following discussion with the Welsh Government, continues to secure appropriate external support to enable it to deliver its statutory duties. And I know, although I think the Leader and the Chief Executive are still waiting to meet with the Minister, I'm aware that discussions have gone on at civil servant level at least within the Welsh Government, and I understand that those conversations have been productive and constructive, and that there is a good developing relationship with Welsh Government. And again, I know that Estyn are coming to visit the Council in the not too distant future. Before they come, and they will have their own view, we have recommended that the Welsh Government continue to provide support through the Education and Recovery Report and keep under review support it provides to the Council generally. I'm sure the Minister will take that into account and wait also for the view of Estyn, that I'm sure they will express a view on that subject. And that's the end of my presentation. And we're happy to take any questions that you may have, any clarity of detail. I'd also welcome any comments that officers or members may have in terms of providing us with a bit of insight in terms of where you feel the Council's made particular progress. I think the last piece of work that we did was around your service and budget review process back in January, February, so a number of months have elapsed and things will have moved on. But I open the floor to you, and as I say, we're happy to deal with questions.
Have we any questions for Mr. Davis? Leader, would you like to comment?
I'll be rude if I don't, Mr. Mayor, so I think I will. I think I've just about gathered my composure following Thomas's departure, so continuing on tonight's theme of hope, I would like to touch upon just a few of the positive points highlighted within the annual improvement report. But first of all, Mr. Mayor, can I just thank Colin for taking us through his presentation with what I felt was a pretty fair and balanced analysis and approach of where we are. And also, of course, to Justine, who is leaving us apparently and going to Pembrokeshire. Best of luck with that. And of course to Jeremy, who's going to be replacing Justine. So you'll be very welcome as well, Jeremy. And of course you were here for the report for the assessment in last September. First of all, can I say to the three of you, please be assured that the issues that are raised in the report are already being worked on in order to continue our journey of improvement. And I can absolutely say with total commitment that officers and members of this authority will continue along that journey. I would like to touch upon just a few points. I know, Colin, you've said a lot of the stuff. The report and the assessment, I should say, was undertaken last September. We have moved on considerably since then, and I'm sure that will be acknowledged when you come back later on this year to do your further assessment and so on. But I would like to point out that a couple of things, and that the corporate assessment of September found that, again, just to touch upon a couple of things that Colin said, that we benefit from a stable and committed political leadership whose ambitions are, for the most part, shared across all political parties, and I want to make that point again. We have a common focus to improve the quality of services and facilities for the benefit of the citizens of Merthyr Tydfil. And I think we'd all agree that all members of the authority certainly have that aim. Collaborative working has enhanced our capacity to deliver, and we have achieved significant investment through partnership working, securing European Union funding with over £46 million obtained between 2007 and 2013, and more money has come on obviously since then. Some clear benefits are being seen with our service improvement framework, which is leading to more objective self-evaluation that is based upon a more robust and complete statistical evidence base. We generally have sound structures and arrangements in place to support good governance. The chair of the audit committee is proactive. I know Richard will like this one. The chair of the audit committee is proactive, and the committee focuses on issues before it without being drawn into party politics. We have effective asset management arrangements which prioritise the maintenance of appropriate levels of capital receipts and the efficient use of buildings, particularly in respect to energy efficiency. That, of course, wasn't always the case. We've been awarded the International Standards Organisation Information Security Standard 27001 against which it maintains continued accreditation. And our revised customer service centre uses a range of technology and information that demonstrates its capability to good effect. Overall, we have reduced the number of national strategic indicators that were below the Welsh average from 18 to 14, increasing the number above the Welsh average from 12 to 16. So some good stuff in there. Obviously, it needs to be tempered with the need to improve in other areas a little bit more. Mr Mayor, I would like to formally put on record my thanks to all members of this council and the staff who worked so hard in assisting our auditors throughout the process, because I'm sure they would agree that it makes their role a lot easier as well when you know, people are going that extra mile to make things that little bit easier. I know the Deputy Leader wants to come in, so with your indulgence, Mr Mayor, I think Phil would just like to finish off what I've started, really.
Councillor Phil Williams.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and first of all, Colin, can I say thank you for what really is a very positive presentation, and obviously well put over as well, but you're well experienced in putting the presentations over, so thank you, though, for the positive messages. The clear message from the audit and from what you've said tonight is that Merthyr Council still needs external support in order to improve. That was the headline of the press release put out by the Auditor General, your boss. Clearly, you may not have had involvement with that. I must admit, the press release itself I was disappointed with, because it was generally a negative message as opposed to the positivity we've seen this evening. I would like, therefore, to I have to make comment on the timescales, because clearly the review you carried out was in September, yet the report came out in June. For whatever reason, there is a 9-month delay between the two, and therefore clearly the Auditor General was still working on the review presumably formed in September, which is that we continue to need support, which takes me into the recommendations. So if I could just deal quickly with the recommendations, Mr Mayor. Recommendation 1, which is that the Auditor General recommends that the Council, following discussion with the Welsh Government, continues to secure appropriate external support to enable it to deliver its statutory duty, to deliver continuous improvement. As I said 2 seconds ago, this was probably based upon your findings in September 2014. At that time, we were being supported by 2 independent financial consultants at our request. And they were there to help us to deliver our financial agenda particularly. We did welcome their support, and much has happened since. We have, as you are aware, commissioned a separate PwC arm to support us in undertaking a review of all areas of our operations in order to deliver not only financial but service efficiencies. Our aim clearly is to minimise the effect on our staff, and at the same time maximise our outputs to the public we actually serve. It's perhaps a little bit awkward to say, if you could have taken the opportunity, say in May time, just to touch base on that particular recommendation, I'm sure you will have seen that actually things have moved on since the September review, and therefore you might have differently worded the recommendation, although we appreciate that the support is still required, and hence the PwC work. Recommendation 2 states the Auditor General also recommends that the Welsh Government continues to support through the Education Recovery Board, and that it keeps under review the support it provides to the Council generally. We have indeed worked very closely with the Recovery Board since it's been with us, and we've openly welcomed their support, their advice, and very much the challenges they've given us. When they've advised and challenged, we've listened, we've gone away, thought about it, and in most cases, not all, but generally 90% of the cases, we've taken on board that advice and moved forward. Not only the Recovery Board, we must acknowledge the support, we must also acknowledge, that was a bad English, wasn't it? We must also support the work put in by the people in the Education Department, the wider support from the other departments, and the members of this Council, whether they be on the executive or on scrutiny. This has been a team effort, and from day one, we've all been engaged with moving forward in terms of attainment and bringing up the achievement of our children, and all parties in this room have been signed up to that. Mr. Mayor, and Colin, I still find it slightly puzzling why you actually made this particular recommendation. Now, I was party to an earlier draft, and it wasn't in the earlier draft, and it's appeared, obviously, at some stage from the earlier draft to now. And the reason I'm puzzled is because I think the reason, that particular comment will certainly be addressed in November when Estin come in. And therefore, perhaps that might be a comment that Estin will be addressing, and therefore, perhaps what you've said might be redundant. Mr. Mayor, for those who've read the report closely, and I know several of our members have, myself included, the positives certainly outweigh the negatives, as you brought out tonight, very eloquently, thank you. And we are making excellent progress in many areas, not just education. Yes, we do have things still to do, and we have to carry on with that journey of improvement. But I'm, for one, very happy with that steady and continuing good progress. As I said previously, this is down to the hard work of the staff, and as the leader has said as well, the staff of the County Borough. They've pulled together as a team to improve services not only to children but across the County Borough in times of severe financial constraint, and as you recognised, it's been one hell of a job trying to balance that financial issue against service continuity and indeed improvement. Mr. Mayor, I also pay tribute not only to the leader and my cabinet colleagues for their drive and leadership, but also to all the members of this council. Again, I repeat that, never mind what party they belong to or what banner they sit under. Those who are not on the executive have served this county borough well over the past few years through their work on scrutiny and audit committee, and I commend them for that. All 33 of us have taken up the challenge. I'm sure we will make and meet those significant challenges in the years to come. Mr. Mayor, this county borough is grateful as ever for the work of PwC. On behalf of the Auditor General, I thank you for all you've done. Colin, I don't know if you were left off, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I hear rumours that you might not be speaking to us next year, so if it is your last appearance before us, may I wish you well in the future, and once again, thank you all for your positive report tonight.
Well, just in case it is the last time you see me, I'd better speak again. And I'd like to speak again because, Deputy Leader, you've made some assumptions that need to be put right because they're incorrect assumptions. You've made the assumption that the recommendation that we've made was based on our findings in September, and you referred to the length of time between September that's elapsed and the report in June. When we left site at the end of September, I was quite clear to the Council that I felt if I was to report based on our findings in September, I felt that it would be unlikely to be as balanced a report as the one that you've received now. What I identified was that the Council was going to carry out a service and budget review, which it anticipated it would complete by the end of November, and I made it abundantly clear that I would want to see the evidence from that review to help me form my conclusions and draw whatever judgments that I went. I recall it was a couple of days before Christmas when I contacted the Council and asked, where is the outcome of this service and budget review process, because I hadn't been re-engaged with that. And it was eventually January and into February before I had the opportunity to review that evidence and form the judgments that I did. Having looked at that service budget review, I still felt that the Council benefits from external support, and the evidence of that internal evaluation of service and financial performance was still not sufficiently robust to give me confidence that the need for that external support was removed. So that recommendation I've made wasn't based on our findings in September, and I deliberately gave the opportunity to the Council to put forward the evidence from that service and budget review. So I just wanted to clarify, because those assumptions that you made weren't correct. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I start by thanking the leader for his very kind and generous remarks. I've been moved twice this evening, first by Thomas and now by the leader. I have to say that Thomas almost took me to tears, but not quite that far down the scale from the leader. But it is everybody's political ambition to work for the community, without any doubt, irrespective of party or non-party allegiance. And we will always work with the leadership in this council in a spirit of constructive challenge. We appreciate the leader's comments about a visible, accountable leadership, and that shouldn't cloud the issue, in my view, of the value of a clear opposition leading to accountability from the council. This has been a very well balanced, if I may say, report. There are good and bad. I'm not going to take political ambition forward here and just highlight the not so good. Colin has done that clearly with his 2 recommendations at the end. I'm taking your comment now. I'd much prefer that the report was based on September. It might have given me more political leverage than I would have this evening. But I'll just contain my remarks to that level at this time.
Right, there's nothing else, so we'll move on. And I would like to thank Mr. Colin Davis for the presentation. Mr. Davis and your team, if you wish to leave, you can. Right, we'll move on to item 19, review of coroner service to consider report of the Chief Executive. I believe Councillor Phil Williams has that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of the report is, as it says there, to advise the Council of the outcome of review of the provision of the coroner services for Powys, Bridgend and Glamorgan Valleys, and Cardiff and Vale of Glamorgan, etc., etc. The members, I presume, will have read the report, so I will not go into any detail. Clearly, Section 1 deals with the background to where we were going. Paragraph 2 looks at the current proposal and sets out 3 main options. And really, when you read the report, there is only one option, and that's clearly set out in the recommendation on page 113 under 6.1, that the Council agrees that the current Powys, Bridgend and Glamorgan Valleys and Cardiff and Vale of Glamorgan coroner areas be merged into a single combined coroner area to cover the 6 local authority areas of Powys, RCT, Merthyr, Tydfil, Bridgend, Cardiff and Vale of Glamorgan. Council agrees that the part-time coroner posts, which currently cover Powys, Bridgend, blah, 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 be made into a single whole-time coroner position for the new coroner area. Council agrees that the same authorities continue to accommodate the that Rhondda Cynon Taf CBC is designated as the relevant authority to continue to accommodate the coroner and continue to provide the existing admin support functions of the service. And finally, Council agrees that the costs be apportioned on a population ratio basis. Subject to comments and questions, I move.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any questions? Any comments? I'll put it to the vote. And that is Harvey. And that is carried. Number 20, Delegate Authority Taxi Licensing to consider a report of the Chief Executive, and I believe it's Councillor Williams again.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of the report is to advise Council of recent case law and to seek delegated authority for officers to grant licence applications made 1 day after the expiry of a licence. Yet again, I assume members will have read the report. It does set out really the circumstances to something which arose fairly recently in respect of a problem that faced the licensing committee in respect of a renewal of a licence. So this is just tidying up the process, and the recommendation on page 123 at 6.1 is that delegated authority be given to both the Public Protection and Housing Manager and to the Trading Standards and Licensing Manager in consultation with the Head of Legal and Governance, so that either of them separately may determine applications to relicense drivers and vehicles made 1 day after the expiry of the previous licence. As it says in the report, anything thereafter goes to committee. I move.
Happy to second the report, Mr Mayor.
Have we any questions? Any comments? I'll put it to the vote. And that's carried.